by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I have a dream.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And I'm back. I took a look at the video that I made yesterday, and I was just having too many technical issues. And what I wanted to do today is just kind of like run through my presentation in a way that somebody at the ATF would actually pay attention to and look at. Side note, I think George Webb is getting better. That's what I've heard. I will confirm that later this afternoon, but I don't want to get too bogged down with the George of it. So I'm going to jump into my presentation. This is targeted at Agent Jose Medina of the ATF Los Angeles office, who is the lead investigator on starting the Palisades fire. What was the origin of the Palisades fire? This presentation focuses on cui bono, who benefits from the Palisades fire, as a way of establishing means, motive, and opportunity. And if Agent Medina thinks that perhaps the information that I'm posting is outside of his area of I would encourage him to escalate this to either the Department of Homeland Security or the FBI or both, because I believe that this is an act of war and that we should be probably dealing with it with a fusion center type approach, where you've got multiple intelligence agencies coordinating in order to be able to discover who actually burned down the Pacific Palisades. With that, I'm going to start my my presentation here. I'm going to start with a copyright disclaimer. I am going to be showing some copyrighted materials here, and I think that it's important to understand that this is fair use, and that's why I am doing this. All right, so let me get to my Keynote control screen if I can. Well, there is the George Webb video, but where is the rest of my Keynote screen? Here we go, window. Well, let's see if this works. Here we go.
If you do look at the oil and you do look at the pipelines, you will understand the news and you will be right. Always, 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 right? If you choose to follow the bouncing ball, if you choose to follow the cat and the laser pointer, they will move that laser pointer faster than you can move as a cat. No matter how fast you are as a cat, the Woolseys of the world can move the laser pointer faster and they can make it look ridiculous, right? But if you know who has the laser pointer and you slap the laser pointer out, it changes the game. So that's the key here, right? Is understanding the game so you can be smarter than the game, right?
So the reason that I'm showing that video is because George Webb has been saying for 7 or 8 years that you have to look at the energy resources, you have to look at the pipelines, and you have to look at what's underneath things to kind of understand the big events of the world. And I don't think that there is any exception here in the Pacific Palisades. So I took this picture on or about New Year's Day, 2025. This is the idyllic Palisades Bluffs, where I used to walk out of my apartment building, and I have, okay, I'm going to just get rid of, okay, here we go. I can't be distracted by nonsense today. I'm sorry. I just can't be. All right, this person's on X. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that I don't see any of your comments. All right, 2025 New Year's Day. This was the idyllic. What you don't see in this picture is just immediately over the bluffs is a test rig drilling site for Occidental Petroleum. There was a 22-year fight by Occidental Petroleum to drill immediately under this area. It's reported in the Los Angeles Times and other outlets that there's up to 60 million barrels of oil and I think 2 billion cubic feet of natural gas under this site. And I believe that that might just be a very conservative estimate. There might actually be more. So next slide. Here we go. That's my wife and I. You can tell that this is a location where people congregate to take in the beauty. And my wife is currently in the hospital because of what happened in the ensuing events after the fire. This is my neighborhood. You can see the red pin up. Let me see if I can see my mouse right around here. That's where I live. That's a 1924 apartment building that had 8 units, 8 500 square foot units, and it's completely surrounded by like $10 million homes. Because there's not enough multi-family housing in the Palisades, that building was grandfathered in and nobody could knock it down. They wanted to build McMansions and all kinds of other things, but they couldn't. So I was lucky to live there, and boy, do I miss living there now. This is what the neighborhood looked like after the fire. And I'm going to pull out a little bit. This is the neighborhood before it burned down, and you can see pins in the lower left-hand corner there. And one of them says Occidental Petroleum Slant Drilling Rig Site, and the other one says Banksy's Elephant. There was a famous water tank that was on this location that the artist Banksy painted. This looks a bit like an elephant, and that water tank was on the same site as the Occidental Petroleum site. So this is what it looks like after the fire. And this is the Occidental Petroleum test site. So why am I talking about this? Occidental Petroleum estimated the oil-bearing sand in the Palisades area to average a thickness of 500 feet and extended over 600 acres. The potentially containing a minimum of 25 million barrels of oil and a maximum of 60 million barrels. Occidental planned to drill up to 60 oil and gas wells in a 2-acre area. Additionally, geologist Theodore Baer suggested that the offshore area near the Palisades drill site may contain more than 50 million barrels. I've heard from my sources in the Houston oil business that it could be considerably more. Occidental officials estimated that the Palisades field also contains 120 billion cubic feet of natural gas. So there's a lot of energy under the Palisades. This dispute over oil drilling in the Pacific Palisades apparently ended with voters approving Proposition O in 1988, repealing ordinances that would have allowed Occidental to drill. Despite facing opposition and having a drilling project rejected by voters in 1988 via Proposition O, Occidental Petroleum Corporation has demonstrated its tenaciousness by indicating its intent to file suit and continue to pursue the case with both the Coastal Commission and the courts. Moreover, the fact that Occidental persisted in seeking permission to drill for 20 years since acquiring the land rights shows the company's determination in accessing the 20 to 60 million barrels of oil potentially contained in the Palisades area. Curiously, today is the 17th. 5 days ago, Warren Buffett bought $36 million more of Occidental Petroleum stock. He already owns a considerable amount of Occidental Petroleum stock, and I find this curious, the timing of all of this. This is an overview of the Palisades, jumping back in history in 1922. This Palisades lot, this is the area of the Palisades that I lived. If you The street in the middle was the main drag called Via de la Paz, the Road of Peace. And I'll show you in the next slide why it was called the Road of Peace. Via de la Paz was this parcel was bought by a congregation, several congregations of Methodists. They wanted to turn this into a Methodist community. And if you went down to the end of the road a year later and turned right and went down a couple hundred yards, my apartment building would be there. And that was built shortly after this picture was taken. This is the reverse angle. So we're looking at it from the ocean. Via de la Paz runs down the middle of the street. And the Methodists, or some of them, had planned on building what's known as a Temple of Peace because it was post-World War I. The thing that I find curious about this is that this Temple of Peace looks a lot like Egyptian temples that I saw in the Valley of the Kings. And I look at things like the Statue of Liberty and wonder whether or not it actually represents liberty or some kind of Greek cult of Attis type character. So when people say that they're going to build a Greek or a Roman temple in the United States of America, I start questioning whether or not it's really for the purposes. So, for example, the pediment on the Mellon Auditorium in Washington, D.C., the Triangle area, is decorated with a hermaphrodite version of the goddess Columbia, and that's where NATO was founded. And there's all kinds of other weird things that go on in that building. So when I look at Greek or Roman temples being built in the United States, I start questioning the purposes of those things. This was never built. It got turned into the neighborhood that I lived in. But before the Pacific Palisades was called the Pacific Palisades, it was called Intsville. And it was named after this guy, Thomas Ince, who owned about 480 acres at what is now Sunset Boulevard and the Pacific Coast Highway, which is, a central place in the Pacific Palisades. What most people don't know is that there's, it's been largely reported in all kinds of different places that Thomas Ince was actually, in fact, murdered by William Randolph Hearst. And because he controlled the media at that point, that it was covered up. And in fact, it was covered in a movie, an HBO movie in 1999 called RKO 281. And in this dramatization, Herman Mankiewicz, the writer of Citizen Kane, is having a discussion with Orson Welles about the same event. So here we go.
You just don't get it, do you? What? Why do you think I scrapped all this stuff?
You can't scrap this. It's too good. This is gold, man.
Gold. You want gold? I'll give you some gold. This is a story you won't find written down in there anywhere else for that matter. It's 1924 or so. And Hearst is giving a birthday party for an old Hollywood producer called Thomas Ince on his yacht. And all the usuals are there, Charlie Chaplin, Llewellyn, etc. And at this time, Marion was screwing everywhere. And so she slips off Chaplin. Hearst sees this. He goes absolutely nuts. He's there on the deck with a revolver just blasting away like Tom Mix. And he hits Thomas Ince. He is dead. The Empire snaps into action. Ince is cremated, lickety-split. No police, no inquest. The Hearst typers cover it up nice and quiet. The next morning, Hearst offers Luella a lifetime contract to keep her all hush-hush. Now you tell me, you still want to take a shaft to a man like that?
Are you kidding me?
All right. Good news, folks. I figured out how to ban somebody on Twitter while I'm doing the show. So justice for our ones, bye-bye. I don't need you anymore. I don't need your comments or your whatever. All right, let's talk about metadata here. This happened on November 10th, 2024. Yesterday, one of the followers said that this could be a practice run for infill, exfill training. This went on for about 45 minutes, as I remember, and I have quite a bit more footage of this, but I'm just going to show you a taste of it. So in San Diego or someplace where there's a military base nearby, I would expect to see something like this in Oceanside. In the Pacific Palisades, I've never seen this before. So this went on for about 45 minutes. All right, next slide. On December 10th, 2024, there was fire in Malibu. I got an alert at about 12:16 a.m. I fired up my trusty plane watcher app and figured out that there were tons of air assets working on this, meaning that there wasn't really much wind. One of the things that you learn when you live in this area is that the helicopters can't fly when it's windy. So the helicopters were flying, and I still got up. My wife was asleep, and I snuck out of my apartment and I went to go shoot some video, and that's what this is here.
I'm out here in the middle of the night covering the Franklin fire in Malibu. I'm shooting some video with my semi. And this is what the fire looks like on the camera. And this is what it looks like out there.
So I haven't been able to edit a lot of this video because when I evacuated, I lost the power supply for my hard drive, and my hard drives have been acting up. So I'm going to have to replace them at this point. So I have a ton of footage, and I just haven't had the ability or the resources to be able to present it for you guys. So I'm getting there slowly. But the next metadata I'm going to show you is, and this is about a 20-minute video, I think. I can tell once I start it. And this is my adventure before and after the Palisades. Just a little background. 4 years ago, my daughter was trapped in the Highlands, and I couldn't get through a police barricade. And because I'm a news outlet, I got special license plates for my car that allow me to go through police barricades in times of emergency. And that's how I actually got this footage. So I also want to shout out the fact that part of the reason that we left so late was because Apple, for whatever godforsaken reason, would not allow me to transfer footage from my wife's iPhone to my MacBook Pro while I was trying to edit video and evacuate at the same time, and it caused me to lose some time. And so I have a special angst right now for Tim Cook and Apple, who make things like AirDrop so ineffective, and it really cost me at this point. So I'm going to run this. Here we go. Okay, this is Peter Duke, and I'm reporting here from the Bluffs, the Palisades. There's my car. We're all packed. We're getting ready to go. And as you can see down the street, there's lots of smoke in the air. If we understand correctly, the fire is behind me in the hills. I'm not sure that it's gotten any houses. And then over there, Mesco Canyon appears to be on fire also. So packed up, we're getting out of here. Bye. All right, this is the Bluffs. And as you can see over here, this is where we normally, it seems like it's on fire there. We're getting the hell out of here.
Light is on. It's going to make your pictures bad. Thank you.
So you guys weren't hearing any audio? Damn it. I'm so angry that you guys didn't have the audio at the beginning there. You have the audio now, right? Stop. One of these days, I'll figure out a way to present this thing correctly. There's Bill's house, and there's Bill's car. I wonder if Bill got out.
We pray he did.
And here's 641, where I used to live. Roof.
Oh.
It's gone, babe.
Where I lived. The neighbors. The neighbors. Everything's gone. I used to live here. It's gone now. The neighbors, obviously. fucking train me. Still hot. This is where we got married. This was Gino's house. The juxtaposition. See all those lemons on the lemon tree? We should take some of them. Wasn't on fire when we came up. It's hot.
All right. Let's move on. Somebody said, Sigint says, Palisades local smelled smoke as early as 8 a.m. on January 7th in the immediate vicinity of January 1st Lockman Forest Car. I'd like to see the documentation on that. So if you want to send a link to contact at the Duke Report, I'd like to see that information. And then there's other questions I don't have the answers to. So I'm going to move on with my presentation. Okay. I want to start talking about epistemological war. Epistemological war is the idea that there is a battlefield in the information space that you don't ever hear Mike Cernovich or Jack Posobiec or General Flynn talk about, and that's the idea about how we know what we know. And I think that epistemological warfare is the top level of information war. And so other things like mind war or what is the other fifth generation warfare, as they call it, psychological warfare. I think that these are all kind of downstream from epistemological warfare. And what that means is that there's a battle space. For example, this is a battle space that we're in right now online. And how we actually know what we know winds up becoming the weaponization of that battle space. So and I want to just talk about the word epistemological for a second. Epistemological is a big, long word, but it really just means how. How do we know what we know? One of the ways that our ideas are steered in one direction or another is by using a psychological technique called presuppositions. A presupposition can be something like the word wildfire. Wildfire connotes or indicates that there's something wild about the fire. The problem with that is that people start using this word, they start thinking, it dismantles their logos, their critical thinking skills. And it makes them presuppose that these fires were caused by something that was wild, as opposed to something that was very controlled. And I would argue that this fire is a controlled fire. George Webb has made the same argument. And but part of the epistemological warfare space is things like this idiot Congressman Brad Sherman, who is using the word wildfire resources. They're, they are selling this idea that these fires are wild. And that way, when somebody comes out and says, oh, it was climate change, or it was the Santa Ana winds, or whatever it was, people will just kind of accept that willingly. On January 1st, 2025, there was a fire that started in the exact same location, which I will show you slides of later. And there was a rumor that ran around the Palisades that because it happened right after midnight, that it must have been teenagers. This is something that I write about on my blog. I'm writing about it in my book. This is called a cause-effect complex equivalency. Almost all bullshit and mind control is based on the same linguistic pattern. So if the fire happened, if the fire was started because of fireworks on 12/15 on New Year's Eve, then it must have been teenagers that did it. Okay, I haven't seen any teenagers. I don't know if the area at the top of Lockman Drive was geofenced, which is something that we have technical capabilities of doing right now. It's something that law enforcement can do. They can buy ping data from cell phones. It's all of your cell phones. Every time you install an app on your phone that's like a free app, and you hit that end user license agreement, and you say, I accept. Many of those apps are pinging the date, the time, the longitude, the latitude, and the altitude of the device. Now, it's used with a unique identifier, meaning that they claim that that data is anonymous and it doesn't know who you are, except that we all know that we all take our phones home with us and plug them in every night before we go to bed. So it's pretty easy to figure out who owns what phone by simply reverse engineering the ping data. And so you can do something called geofencing, where you can say, okay, I want the top of Lockman Lane between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. on December 31st, 2024 to January 1st, 2025. And you can actually just geofence that area, and then you can get all of that anonymous data, and then you can work backwards from there. So there's actually ways to investigate this. There's ways to technically investigate this. Now, one indication that this would be an arson fire would be that there would be no data. Because if you were sending arsons up to do that, they wouldn't take phones with them if they were smart arsons. So there it goes. Okay, next slide. San Francisco Chronicle seems to be pushing this Palisades had a firework problem story. This appeared on January, where am I looking at my slides here? January 13th, 2025. Sue Pasco on October 2023 did a story about fireworks in the Palisades. And I don't remember, this was in February of either 2023 or 2024, somebody posted this thing of fireworks at the rec center in the Palisades. Again, I don't know if this is teenagers or other people. And I think that the teenager presupposition is like the wildfire presupposition. It's designed to get us to think a certain way. Here's a photograph that I shot on November 25th, 2024 on the Bluffs. And this was a tagger. A tagger tagged this location. And the thing is about tags is that these are unique signatures. And so if the Los Angeles Police Department has a database of tags, then they can probably go figure out who the tagger is and then ask him questions about what he was doing in the Palisades on November 25th, 2024, and work backwards from there. The reason I think that's important is that if I was an oligarch and I wanted to start a wildfire in the Pacific Palisades, I would probably, here's how I would do it. I would fly to Basel, Switzerland, or Davos. I would meet with somebody who was an ex-British intelligence asset, and I would get him to hire gang members in Mexico to come over the border with Biden's flooding the system. And I would platoon those guys out with instructions to be on a lookout for certain text messages that they might get from the Los Angeles Fire Department, a warning of wildfires. And in order to task them with where to start the fire, I might use software that was developed by the World Economic Forum. This will be all done on a handshake in a cafe. And there probably would be no paper trail. So you just have to look at metadata like I'm doing right now in order to try to figure this out. I would look at things like TikTok style videos. So here's a video that came out on the moment that the fire started. So January 7th in the morning, this guy, Benji Oren, whose handle is Benji Jarvis, posted this video. Now, this video is interesting. I'm going to frame it for you. So if you don't want to listen to my framing, turn the volume down. But my framing is this. These guys are not acting in a way that somebody who just saw a fire, who has a smartphone, would react. That is, if I saw a fire and I had a smartphone and I was up in the Santa Monica Mountains, and by the way, it's direct line of sight to the cell phone towers from where these guys are standing. I've hiked this trail many times, and my guess is that they have 5 bars where they're standing. So not only could they have called 911, they could have live streamed it, like with the amount of bandwidth that they probably had, but that's what they didn't choose to do. So you see a very quick picture of the fire at the beginning, and then you hear these histrionic actor kind of lines coming out of these guys like, oh, gee whiz, we have to run for our lives. Oh, people have criticized me online for accusing these guys of being arsons. I'm not accusing them of being arsons. I am accusing them of being actors. The other thing that's mitigating circumstance for me is that this video is 480p, which is a low resolution, meaning that if it wasn't airdropped from one phone to the other, and there is an indication, the guy who's shooting the video is yelling to Benji. So Benji, who posts the video, is the guy who's in the video, but he's not the guy who's shooting the video. So there's all kinds of questions that I have for Benji, but I'll play the video now.
Wait, we're in a fucking fire right now, guys. We gotta go up. Let's go up. Let's go up. Go, 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 go.
Wait, we're in a fucking fire right now. Here we go.
Go, go. Benji, this way.
Benji this way. Okay, so Benji posts the video, but Benji's in the video. The guy shooting the video is not Benji. Who's the guy who shot the video? Who are the other 4 guys? Who are the other 4 guys?
Yeah. Come on. Nice. Let's go, let's go.
That's a classic story.
I smell fire.
I smell fire. I smell smoke. Like that, because everybody says that.
Wait, did you hear it? Wait. Oh my God, look.
Oh my God, look. Okay. Oh my God, look.
Yeah.
Right, this is the famous Skull Rock, right? Which is, I never heard of it. My ex-wife has been hiking on these trails for 25 years, and it was well known to her, but I had never heard of Skull Rock. I thought kind of ominous.
Look to the left.
Also, we should go to the left.
Where we going? Left. Oh my God, the wind's blowing right towards us.
Oh my God, the wind is blowing right towards us. Be afraid. Be afraid.
Yeah, it's down. It's down. Go. We got this.
All right, so that's that. All right, I had some questions about Benji. But before we get to that, in order to put a spotlight on these guys, Rob Schneider, who's a famous actor who's got lots of followers on X, Twitter, said, please help identify these guys, investigate the kids who are right near the fire's starting point. The thing, again, that's interesting about these guys is that they've got these big grins on their faces, like they're smiling. Like it's curious to me why you would be afraid of for your life. There was a fire starting, and you would have this big shit-eating grin on your face. Like, I don't understand it. But besides that, it was later. The Los Angeles Times followed up on it. Several outlets followed up on it. These guys were identified in this way by Rob Schneider. A bunch of people immediately assumed that they were the arsons, and then all of the attention went to them. The reason I think that it's curious is because it's a magician's trick, right, to misdirect people. So my hypothesis about these guys is not that they are arsons, but they were there to distract people from who the arsons were. That was the intent and the purpose of this video. So this is an epistemological warfare execution, getting this misinformation out into the public in order to sow confusion. All right, next slide. Interesting thing about this guy Benji is that he runs several websites. One is called The Age of Synthesis. As people who follow my channel know, synthesis is the final step in something called the Hegelian dialectic, which in its common academic form is posited as thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and in a more colloquial rendering, it's problem, reaction, solution. Synthesis is the reaction, it is the solution to a problem that has been created. So, for example, if you wanted to change a bunch of laws or change the status of a bunch of real estate, you might burn all of that real estate down. And then if you also wanted to get rid of the government, the local and state government, and replace it with something else, you might want to use the reaction to that fire as the complete ineptitude of that government in order to be able to install your own government, right? And so to that end, synthesis is an interesting word, and the name of the site, synthesis, is an interesting word. And the example that he gives is synthesizing Eastern philosophy with Western science. This will become interesting later because there's an organization in Los Angeles with some very well-connected people whose entire mission is to synthesize Eastern philosophy and Western science. That's their mission. So I'll talk about that in a second. He also has an entire section on his website called The Benches of Esalen. The Benches of Esalen is the Esalen Institute. It's up in Big Sur. And if people who follow Courtney Turner, Matthew Crawford, Matthew Arrett, Cynthia Chung will realize that the Esalen Institute has been part of the mind control operation of intelligence agencies operating in North America for the last 50 or 60 years. So I think it's interesting that this cat has this whole thing on the benches of Esalen. He's also got all kinds of other Esalen ties if you go and you check his website out. Here's an article that he wrote called My Near-Death Experience with the Palisades Fire, where he uses a line from a Bob Dylan song to describe, again, and the language in this Substack post of his, which you can find by going to Benji Jarvis, at Benji Jarvis, who is actually Benjamin Oren. And again, I don't know if these are middle names or last names or whatever they are. But in any case, he uses a line from the Bob Dylan song, The Answer, My Friend, is Blowing in the Wind. He posted this on February 5th, 2025. When I saw this, it was interesting because it reminded me of something else. It reminded me of an article that was written a couple of weeks earlier in Nomia Mag. And Nomia Mag is the official magazine of the Bergruin Institute. The Bergruin Institute is the institute that, here, let me see if my arrow keys will work here. The Bergruin Institute is the institute that synthesizes Eastern philosophy with Western science. So it's kind of curious that this guy has his own website. He doesn't mention the Bergruin Institute. He happened to be at the site of the fire when it started, created this epistemological warfare video, and then has the exact same mindset or philosophy as the Nomia magazine. Well, what's interesting about the Nomia magazine is that Nathan Gardells, who I argue is the handler of Nicholas Bergruin, he's the brains behind he's the blaster behind the master. Actually, I might have that inverted. He also quotes Bob Dylan a few days earlier, and makes the same argument. So you've got two different people, one at the scene of the crime and another one who's got the synthesis to the Hegelian dialectic that is the Los Angeles Pacific Palisades fire, all using the same terminology in the things that they're writing. This is metadata to me. And Agent Medina, I hope you're paying attention and taking notes. And this is just a little knock at Nathan Gardells, which is that, he had to put the whole lyrics to the song in there, and my thought was, okay, boomer. And in that, and this is a little comic relief that I'm throwing in here. This is whenever I have a Hegel moment, whenever I look at something and I think this is Hegel, this is the deal that goes through my head. All right, so what is the rationale of this Hegelian dialectic? Obviously, the presupposition is climate change. Climate change. These fires were, and this is, again, if I go back to Nathan Gardells' article here in LA Blowing in the Wind, you will see all the specific circumstances of the LA's fatal firestorm are not, I'm going to start again. All the specific circumstances of LA's fatal firestorms are not attributable to climate change, but there is no doubt, universal quantifier, it set the conditions for the hellish devastation. So he immediately, this is doublespeak. He's saying that it's not one thing, but then he says that it is. This is a psychological warfare technique, as Whole neighborhoods were reduced to ash. It was reported last week that the temperatures on the planet, this is a complex equivalency right here, rose past the 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2.7 degree Fahrenheit mark set by the Paris Climate Accord as the danger threshold beyond which calamity calls. For those living in LA, calamity is already here. So he's making a complex equivalence. He's saying this is climate change, okay? He's got no scientific evidence. There is no scientific evidence for this. This is pure rhetoric and bullshit, frankly, okay? But this is what they're trying to sell. In part, the catastrophe that struck the most populated county in the US was collectively self-inflicted by real estate developers, lax lawmakers, and residents. So he's putting the blame on these people, okay? These are the people that in his high and mighty philosopher king, self-described nonsense position, he's gonna finger the real estate developers, the lax LAX lawmakers, and the residents that nestle their dwellings in the natural beauty of the state horribly, all of whom dismissed the well-known risks, all of whom, universal quantifier, okay? This is all rhetoric. This is all nonsense. This is all psychological warfare techniques. And he's an evil guy. Nathan Gardels, you're an evil fucker. All right, let's go on. Climate change. The Independent timeline, how the LA fires erupted into the worst natural disaster in California history. LA wildfires were more intense due to the planet warming pollution scientists report. Scientists report. They love scientists report. You know, anybody who's got 2 letters in front of their names and 3 letters after their names has credibility in this media space. And I'm calling bullshit on all of them. Fire facts. This is something a lot of people don't know. I'm sure that Agent Medina knows this, that the fires were started twice in the same location. On January 1st around midnight, January 7th at about 10:30. Okay, here's Skull Rock. Obviously, you saw Skull Rock and it wasn't on fire at that point. So there's a weird kind of psychological thing going on here. We're going to shoot a picture of Skull Rock. Does this picture imply doom, or, you know, what is it? Obviously, the photographer didn't hike down to the front of it where you can see that it looks like a skull. And then this is the back, which, again, doesn't look like a skull. He's hiking around here. Maybe it was closed off. I see yellow tape there. Anyway, these are pictures that were taken on January 7th and January 1st. The fire was started in the same place. Okay. Metadata. Now, some people argue that it was burning embers that had been smoldering for a week. I think the fire department spent 2 or 3 days there. My ex-wife actually hiked there on January 2nd and checked out the entire location. Yeah, I have other reasons for believing that it started in the same place I will get to. Here's where it started on January 1st, picture on the left. On January 7th, it started in almost identical place. Okay. This is January 1st, same location before. This is January 9th, after. So before, after, before, after. Okay, I'm going to, okay, yeah, I'm going to jump to the thesis. I'm sorry, I'm confused. I'm going to jump to the synthesis. So remember, Mr. Oren's site is called synthesis. The last step of the Hegelian dialectic is called synthesis. But in order to be able to have your synthesis, you need to have the thesis and the antithesis. So you need to have the fire, then you need to have the reaction, which we're in the middle of the reaction right now. The reaction hasn't finished. We're still in the middle of the reaction. Okay, but what's the synthesis? Well, in 2012, the Bergruin Institute, the same institute that wants to combine Eastern philosophy with Western science, okay, published this, a blueprint to renew California. And among the people who were involved in the creation of this were Nicholas Bergruin, Eli Broad, another oligarch, Gray Davis, Robert Hertzberg, who is he's the leader of the Senate in the California State Senate. Condoleezza Rice, Eric Schmidt, Terry Semel, and George Shultz, among others. Okay, so and there's a basic thesis here, which is that the government of California is non-functional, and I'm going to make the argument that that's on purpose. The New York Times covered the story. It says, in the hills above the Pacific Palisades, there is a crime scene tape and scattered debris, clues to what may have caused the initial fire that eventually raged through thousands of structures. Okay, this is what I'm doing now that the New York Times is not doing. All right, so let's look at some metadata here. If you on the right side of this map is the J. Paul Getty Museum, which runs next to the 405. Next to the J. Paul Getty Museum is a 440-acre lot that the Bergruin Institute wants to develop into an institute that of higher learning, or a place for basically a philosopher king palace, I think is what it really is. And they want to meld Eastern philosophy with Western science. That's their idea. And basically what that means is technocracy. They want to implement all of the things that Elon Musk is talking about, and they want to put together a Catherine Austin Fitts style control grid, okay, that's based on the Chinese model of the social credit score system. And that's what the Bergruin Institute's all about. And they're into all of these parallel things as far as like, brain implants and cybernetics and all of this other stuff. That's up on the right side there by the J. Paul Getty Museum, adjacent to it, really close to it, right? On the lower center, you'll see the Getty Villa. The Getty Villa is a recreation of the J. Paul Getty, of a villa that was found in Herculaneum, which is outside of Pompeii. It was buried in ash in Pompeii, and J. Paul Getty built a replica of it in what is known in the Pacific Palisades as the Amalfi Coast. The thing that's interesting about that is that if you follow the work of Cynthia Chung, you will know that Amalfi and Capri were the centers of the cult power that was controlling the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. And what's interesting is that the J. Paul Getty is built in this Amalfi Coast area, and in the oligarch neighborhood that Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks live in, the two main streets that run through that part of the world are called Amalfi and Capri. And also, a lot of people don't know that Max Horkheimer lived in the same neighborhood, and very close to him, Theodore Adorno lived on Kenter in Brentwood, which was a 5-minute drive. And also 5 minutes away in Santa Monica Canyon lived Edward Marcuse. So, so the Frankfurt School of critical theory, which drives all of the Marxism that we've been dealing with for the last 50 years, is all born in this area. It's all born right here, okay? This is the middle of it. If you drew a line between the two Gettys, and you look at all of the gray areas of this map, these are the areas that burn. The reason that that's important is that the green areas of this map are part of something called the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy that was created by Jerry Brown 40 years ago. And the Santa Monica Conservancy is like a giant, it's like the Blob. What they're trying to do is they're trying to claw back all of the residential real estate in the Santa Monica Mountains and turn it into wilderness land, like some kind of World Wildlife Foundation project. They don't want people living there, okay? They don't want people living in the Pacific Palisades. They didn't want my apartment building and all the houses around there to be there. And in fact, there is only one, the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy for 41 years has done nothing except buy land and appropriate it. So the idea that they're working with the Bergruin Institute to allow them to have 440 acres of Santa Monica Mountain land at the same time that the Pacific Palisades is burning to the ground is highly suspect. Agent Medina, I'd like you to check that out. Okay, this is a video that was made by the New York Times, the 24 hours when LA went up in flames. I want you to pay specific attention to the time stamps and look at what happens between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on Tuesday the 7th. Okay, I'll start this now. You gotta kind of pay a lot of attention. Here we go. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Boom. See that? It grew exponentially between 10 and 11. And so I want to know, Agent Medina, what happened between 10 and 11 o'clock? Because there's a lot of different things that could have happened. So, for example, okay, I'm not saying that this happened, okay, but I want to know if there's potassium permanganate and glycol found in any of these areas. And this would have had to have been collected before it started raining because after this whole event, people who are researchers and followers of this channel showed me this. This is a website this is video from a website called droneamplified.com. You can go there right now and fact check this. I will play this video of what the droneamplified.com product is. It's a drone.
One of the best ways to combat wildfires is to use controllable, low-intensity fires that consume the fuel on the ground that would otherwise help a large, intense fire spread. Ignition spheres, similar in size and shape to a ping pong ball, are a great way to ignite a low-intensity fire. That can be dispensed using drone-amplified, drone-based system, custom flight control software to safely ignite low-intensity fires over a large area.
Ping pong balls, as they're commonly referred to, has a dry chemical in it called potassium permanganate. And when you inject the ping pong ball with glycol or antifreeze, you get a reaction about 30 to 45 seconds later. The reason we use ping pong balls is because we can drop it from the air. They ping pong down through the trees and get to the ground level so we can establish a backing fire, which generally, ecologically speaking, is more healthy for the forest, and it doesn't generate crown fire generally because we can control the intensity of the heat. If we start at the top and bring a line of balls across the top and then step that down the ridge, you get less intense fire and just generally underburn the large fuel mass that's generated under, however many years of conditions they've had since the previous fire.
Drone Amplified has combined tested and proven technology with cutting-edge innovation in hardware and software to provide a safe, affordable, effective way to advance the efforts of protecting our land, communities, and firefighters.
All right, so not only does Drone Amplified make these drones, but they also have an app. And I have an iPhone, so I can't do this. But if you've got an Android phone, you can go to droneamplified.com and you can download this app right here that I'm showing you. Will allow you to map out a map using something like Google Earth. To determine where you want it, and then send your drone off to drop the fireballs. So if you were trying to amplify a fire, you might wait until night because you may not want people to see the drone, and then you could deploy it over specific areas if you wanted to be able to amplify the fire. This is a hammer. This is like a tool story, right? You can use a hammer to hit somebody over the head, or you can use a hammer to build a house with. Like these drones are sold as something that prevents fires, but you can obviously also use them to start fires. So they're there's several articles about them. Here's one from the U.S. Forest Service. So why is this interesting in combination with other things? Well, the World Economic Forum has a program that they talk about. Now, you'll have a hard time finding this unless you go to the World Economic Forum website and you type in fire aid. And the reason is because immediately after the Palisades fire, there was a big concert series that was announced that curiously had the exact same name as the software that you would use if you, it's being sold, again, it's a tool. It's being sold as a mechanism for preventing wildfires. But I think that the same technology could probably be used to plan wildfires. If you wanted to plan them, if you wanted to figure out where the worst place to start a fire in the Pacific Palisades could possibly be, then you might use AI software like Fire Aid to plan to send a drone or send drones to start fires in order to maximize the amount of damage possible. This is a complete hypothesis. I'm not saying that this is what happened, but this is the way that my brain works when I'm looking at metadata. Okay. Fire Aid, naming it the same thing, is an example of something that I write about on my blog called signature reduction. That is, if you go to Google right now and you type in Fire Aid, you're going to hear about Sting and some music concert. But you won't find Fire Aid unless you go to the World Economic Forum and type in Fire Aid. And then you'll find the 5 articles on that website that they have written about Fire Aid. Like I said, there's 5 different articles, and there's a substantial one that you can download. Desired impact, an overarching vision. What does a world in which AI systems for wildfires are optimized look like? I argue it might look like the Pacific Palisades on Monday, February 17th, 2025. It has all kinds, the software has all kinds of fire AI. It's called Fire, capital AID. Has many different components. It's got geospatial components, temporal components, human components, and technical infrastructure. It keeps track of the temperature, the lower water levels, the higher CO2 emissions, the higher and higher production. You can use it to coordinate with drones, sensor networks, and social media. So it's got all the components that you would need if you wanted to orchestrate a disaster like this. Okay. So cui bono, who benefits? Okay, I'm going to start with a little background. This is a video by Greg Reese. I like Greg Reese. I don't agree with Greg Reese on everything. I think I've demonstrated already that amplified drones are can be used as directed energy weapons. So I'm not buying the beam weapon blue roof stories until somebody shows me something. I'm perfectly willing to change my mind, but I like to act on the advice of Parmenides, and you got to look at what is. I just showed you a drone that drops fireballs. Okay, nobody's ever showed me a beam weapon that destroys everything but blue roofs. That's complete conjecture at this point. Here is Greg Reese's video on who controls California.
Pat Brown's father, Edmund Joseph Brown, was known for running scams and gambling operations in San Francisco. With the help of businessman William Newsom II, Pat Brown became governor of California for 2 terms. During his governorship, he awarded the Squaw Valley concession contract to William Newsom III and his partner, John Pelosi. The deal was criticized for the state of California paying for everything and getting nothing. William Newsom III grew up with the governor's son, Jerry, who was training to be a Jesuit priest. John Pelosi's son, Paul, married Nancy D'Alessandro, daughter of Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., who was known for smuggling heroin into the U.S. with Lucky Luciano and the Baltimore Mafia. John Pelosi's son, Ron, married William Newsom's daughter, Barbara. Over ongoing disputes about the Squaw Valley concession, William Newsom Sr. threatened to hurt the governor politically, just as Governor Brown was running for a third term against Ronald Reagan. He lost. But 8 years later, the former governor's Jesuit son, Jerry, reclaimed the governorship in 1974. He appointed William Newsom III to a Placer County judgeship in 1975, and 3 years later to the State Court of Appeal. William Newsom was an attorney for oil magnate J. Paul Getty, named in the 1966 Guinness Book of World Records as the world's richest private citizen. And while serving on the appellate bench in the 1980s, he helped Getty's son, Gordon, secure a change in state trust law that allowed him to claim his share of a multi-heir trust. After Newsom retired from the bench, he became administrator of the Getty Trust and provided seed money for his son, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi's nephew, to start a plump jack business that led to a career in San Francisco politics as mayor of San Francisco and lieutenant governor of the state of California. Gavin Newsom was informally adopted by the Gettys after his parents divorced, and recently succeeded family friend Jerry Brown to be the current governor of California. For 80 years, these four families have ruled over the state of California politically. And with the help of Kamala Harris, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and Dianne Feinstein, California's uncontrollable state government spending has amounted to over $2 trillion in debt and the highest tax rates in the country. The homelessness population is on the rise so much that a typhus outbreak has reached epidemic levels. Thousands of needles from illicit drugs litter the streets. They have made California a sanctuary state. They have been steadily chiseling away at the Second Amendment. They have passed laws for mandatory vaccinations, and they continue to aggressively oppose our president on every front. On October 1st, 2016, right before Donald Trump won the election, President Obama transferred full control of the internet from the US government to an independent California nonprofit organization. In a cyber war scenario, the US government may not have control over the internet, even if it secures military and government domains and IP addresses. The targets in cyber warfare are likely to be civilian, and the US government requires private sector infrastructure to operate. Since the internet underpins our computer systems, electrical grids, communication systems, and other critical infrastructure, our entire civilian society could be at risk. Who controls California? Who controls the four families? What is a republic? For newswars.com, this is Greg Reese.
All right. Yeah, I just put Don Lovell in a timeout. I'm at a point in my life where if you can't prove something, then I don't want to hear it. Like I'm full of speculation myself, but I'm trying to stick with the facts. So you're talking about benzene fog and all this other stuff. Show me the video and then show me the chemical analysis of the fog that's in the video. Okay, because unless you can prove what you're saying, I just showed you that there are drones that drop Dragon Balls, as somebody was calling them. Okay, I just showed you a video of it. Okay, from a company on their website, droneamplified.com. Go there. Don't start talking to me about benzene smoke without showing me how that actually is a real thing. Okay, otherwise, it's all epistemological warfare to me. Karen Bass appoints Steve Soboroff to lead the Pacific Palisades rebuilding effort. It's interesting. This happened as soon as she got back to Los Angeles. This guy, Steve Soboroff. Why is Steve Soboroff important? Steve Soboroff is important because Steve Soboroff is attached to the Bergruin Institute. So if you're talking about thesis, antithesis, synthesis, okay, then Steve Soboroff would be, if the Bergruin Institute somehow is implicated in the thesis part, then they're probably implicated in the synthesis part. So the idea that Steve Soboroff, this is cui bono, Agent Medina, cui bono. Steve Soboroff is associated with the Bergruin Institute. The Bergruin Institute wrote a paper in 2012 about reforming the government, the constitutionally created government of the state of California, after some crisis, okay, that demonstrates that the state and the city of the state is no longer capable of managing things. So there it is. So this was in regard. This quote was in regard to this story. Billionaire wants to build think tank in the high risk fire zone. Okay, I'm going to bring this back to William Randolph Hearst now. Nicholas Bergruin sold himself as the homeless billionaire. At one point, he claimed that he sold everything that he owned, and all he had was a G6 in his iPhone. Poor guy. Anyway, it turns out that Nicholas Bergruin later spent $63 million to buy the estate of William Randolph Hearst, who's the guy who shot Thomas Ince when the Pacific Palisades was named Inceville. So, curious data point. I don't know what it means, okay? But Bergruin is certainly a connected guy. And I'm just going to run through these things quickly. He's buddy-buddy with Gavin Newsom, governor of California. He's buddy-buddy with Jerry Brown, ex-governor of California. He gave him an award, the Blue Plymouth Award. I don't know what that is. He's friends with Karen Bass. He's friends with Gil Garcetti. He's friends with, and when I say friends with, here's something that I learned from my journalism days working with a CIA asset who is pretending to be a journalist, is that if you max out your donations to any politician, they'll hang out with you. They'll come and they'll accept awards from you. They'll return your phone calls. They'll go to parties. They'll do all kinds of things. So when I say friends, I'm just saying he's a donation buddy. He's obviously somebody who provides a lot of support to these candidates, because if he didn't, then they wouldn't be so happy when they're in pictures with him. Obviously, I don't think he provides as much support to Nancy Pelosi, because she seems kind of nonplussed in this. It's like, this is the Nancy Pelosi look where she's thinking, you haven't offered me enough money yet. Like, you need to offer me more money. If you offer me more money, then I will respond to what you're saying. That's the expression. This is my interpretation of her expression. Here he is with Eric Adams. He obviously just wrote a check. Here he is with Barack Obama. He probably just wrote a big check. Here he is with Al Gore. He probably just wrote a medium-sized check. I could see from the expression on his face. And here he is with his good buddy Henry Kissinger. Okay, so the guy is connected. But you know, it doesn't just stop in the United States and Americans. Here he is with Shimon Peres. Here he is with Emmanuel Macron, the Rothschild banker. Here he is with the ex-prime minister of Australia, the ex-prime minister of Finland, and the ex-president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy. And not to leave anybody out, here he is with Chairman Xi of the Chinese Communist Party. But you know, he's got tech bro contacts. Here he is with Sean Parker, one of the founders of Facebook. And here he is with chairman of Alphabet and Google, Eric Schmidt. And I think head of the board of directors of the World Economic Forum, and the president of and CEO of Salesforce, Reid Hoffman. Here he is with Pierre Omidyar, who not only was one of the founders of eBay. You can read all about that in the limited Hangout book that's called eBoys, but also was the founder of The Intercept, which famously created something called Secure Drop, which was supposedly a secure way for whistleblowers to be able to leak information to authorities or to journalists. And Secure Drop had an amazing record of whistleblowers getting arrested, prosecuted, and killed. So using Secure Drop didn't actually turn out to be a very good idea. But not to leave anybody out, here's Nicholas Bergruin with Lawrence Bender, old friend of mine, who was one of the original producers of Quentin Tarantino's movies, and went on to produce Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, which won him an Academy Award. And there's good old Elon in the middle, and Bobby Kotick, who's the CEO of Activision, I believe, and a guy named Baruch. And I wonder whether or not he's related to Bernard Baruch of the FDR administration fame. Anyway, moving along, here he is with Niall Ferguson, the biographer of the Rothschilds, among other people, and Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg, by the way, in Italian is Montefiore, and Bergruin is also German for Greenberg or mountain green, kind of flipped around there. So interesting name. And here he is with Michael Milken and Nathan Gardells, his good friend Ariana Huffington, Richard Dawkins, famous atheist extraordinaire, and Yuval Harari, who's the transhumanist freak from the World Economic Forum. And not to leave anybody out, here's Evelyn de Rothschild, his good buddy, and he's treating him he's much friendlier with Evelyn de Rothschild is much friendlier with him than he is to King Charles, who he pokes in the chest with his finger. And here he is with the Pope, and at a party for the launch of their book, here he is with the leader of the California State Senate and the CEO of Snapchat. And why don't you know any of this? How come you never have heard of this name, Nicholas Bergruin? He's effectively the George Soros of California, and that's because he's good buddies with Patrick Soon-Schwong, who's who owns the Los Angeles Times. So it's good to, if you don't want to be in the news, it's good to know the guy who owns the Times. Anyway, Bergruin seems to be fascinated with fires in the Santa Monica Mountains. He posts these on his Instagram. These are from his Instagram thread. Thank you for the Los Angeles Fire Department. And he's got pictures of fires fighting fire. And then he's another one. And then here's one from his G6. Maybe it's a G5. I'm not sure what he's got. I'd love to know his tail number, though. If anybody's got his tail numbers, I'd love to know his tail numbers. Anyway, here he is taking a picture from his plane of fires 374 weeks ago. He also he posts about drones, and he also posts about the Getty Villa. So these are, again, just pieces of metadata. But here's a real interesting one. Again, getting back to the whole Hegel of it all, is like he posted this picture of this is a stylized picture of the Enola Gay, which famously dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if you believe that story. I'm not sure that I do. But he says every positive value has its price in negative terms. So this is an inversion of Hegel, right? The genius of Einstein leads to Hiroshima. Okay. Is that what, are you telling us something, Nick? Like, what are you telling us? And then he also says on 9/11, this is so small I can't read it, so I'm going to have to get close here. It says, when we humans become our own enemies. Okay. So again, if you buy the conventional story about 9/11, that it was caused by, a bunch of guys, it was coordinated by a guy living in a cave with a satellite phone, then this would make sense to you. If you don't believe that story, then perhaps there's other ways of figuring this out. Nick has a brother, his name is Alex. They have an interesting background. Their father, Heinrich, I can't remember his name. Heinz, I think. Heinz Bergruin. Heinz Bergruin was a journalist in 1938 in Germany and got fired because the Nazis were in power because they said his name sounded Jewish. And he made his way to Paris, and after World War II, he became an art dealer, and then he became a multimillionaire, and he became so successful as an art dealer that there's a museum named after him in Germany. And when he died, Angela Merkel went to his funeral. It's kind of an interesting, how do you go from being an out-of-work journalist to a multimillionaire art dealer after World War II? I got lots of theories about that, okay? But money laundering is probably the main one. Money laundering for the CIA and ex-Third Reich officials who had limestone caves filled with artwork becomes another one. But in any case, his brother, Alexander, had an art show in 2021 by this artist named Danny Fox. And the name of the show was called The Sweet and Burning Hills. Metadata, Agent Medina. This is metadata, okay? Why are they doing art shows in 2021 that are supposedly depicting the Hollywood Hills, which are really just the east end of the Santa Monica Mountains, okay? Why are they doing art shows called The Sweet and Burning Hills, okay? Good question. I don't know the answer to the question. And here's a slide I couldn't show when I was at the Lighthouse Church the other night because they don't allow this, but these are more pictures from the same art show. All right, so I'm going to show you now, I'm going to show you a video when they were pimping this book, re-envisioning, reconstructing, I can't remember what the name of it is, Democracy. Bergruin says 3 interesting things in this video. 1, he says that California is broken because you need a 2/3 vote to change anything. 2, he says California is broken because the Constitution has been changed 500 times. The thing is about changing the Constitution in the state of California is that you need a 2/3 majority. So those 2 things don't line up. Okay, one of them can be true. Okay, and then the third thing that he said is that the problem with California is the proposition, the California state ballot initiative proposition function that the government has, because it makes California impossible to govern. It's something, it's literally the most direct democracy mechanism in the United States of America, as far as I can tell. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 examples of this direct democracy. One was Proposition O in 1988, organized by residents of the Pacific Palisades in an organization called No Oil. They got California to vote to prevent any offshore oil drilling in the Santa Monica Bay, meaning that Occidental Petroleum could not put up any offshore oil rigs in Santa Monica to get to the oil that they're trying to get to right now. So that would be an example of a ballot proposition. There's 2 others. One is Proposition 8, which is where the voters of the state of California voted to get rid of, they voted to define marriage as that between a man and a woman that would prevent gay marriage from happening in the state. That was overturned. So it was voted in by the voters of direct democracy, by the voters of the state of California, and then it had to be overturned in the courts in order to approve gay marriage in California. The third one was about 4 or 5 years ago, as the state of California, we voted to get rid of daylight savings time. So I don't know if you have this in the state or the country that you're in, but in California, we reset our clocks every 6 months, an hour forward, an hour back. It's a big pain in the ass. So 4 years ago, the people of the state of California voted to get rid of daylight savings time. Today, I can tell you, as I'm sitting in the state of California, we still have daylight savings time. So if it's the ballot proposition that's broken, then what ballot proposition are you talking about, Nick? Because it seems to me that if you're talking about Proposition O, okay, and if it seems to me that if what you're trying to do is that you're trying to get rid of the current government in order to put something that is more in line with the needs of the oligarchy that's currently trying to take over California and the United States, then that makes more sense. I'm sorry if I've presupposed too much for you in this video, but that's my take.
The Institute sort of has 2 elements. The think tank element and what we call the action tank element, meaning we take the idea that governance is key and that the way that we as citizens are managing our lives with each other is going to be sort of the greatest determinant in our lives, maybe next to culture. And therefore, the book is all around systems of governance and the effect on society. What we've done beyond the think part is, as I said, we've become really an action tank around a few sort of key issues that we think, frankly, are important and need reform. And we've sort of focused on three, very different. One is California. The idea simply being that California is in itself almost like a country. If you think of California, it has 38 million people. It's got a GDP of, in dollars, around $2 trillion. So it's as big as really any of the leading European countries. It's almost as big as the UK. So it's an important place. It's also a place that has influence. It's a place that's been incredibly successful, but has enormous challenges today. The success, you probably know, not only the GDP that exists today, all the people that's attracted, but it's a leader in technology, leader in media, leader actually in agriculture. So it's a leader in a number of different areas, but it has today great difficulty in financing its future. It has big fiscal deficit, and it has large unemployment, even though it has success, meaning it has more than 10% unemployment, which is high by US standards. So you have uneven distribution of, let's say, economic spoils and probably opportunities. And the system in California has, we think, flaws that are truly structural, which is what we're interested in as an institute. These flaws are that the governor, who in theory is the boss, needs 2/3 majority from the legislature to get anything meaningful done. So all the issues that exist today, deficit and other issues of California, need to be addressed. If the governor wants to make changes, governor needs a supermajority, in essence, of the legislature. Very hard to get in an environment where in the US you've got two parties, which historically have been reasonably equal. And the legislature itself won't address the tough issues because they have an electorate to defend, and the electorate sort of hijacks a lot of the legislatures with issues of their own.
Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second. So he's saying that it's impossible to govern in California because the boss, the boss needs 2/3 to get anything meaningful done.
California, we feel, has great difficulty in in reforming itself. And California also has a very...
Okay, so we have to ask the question, who says that they have to reform it? And, I mean, I can argue that the dysfunction of California is manufactured, but I digress.
Interesting thing, which is that it has history of referendums to actually...
These are the ballot initiatives that he's talking about. So, like I said, Proposition O was a ballot initiative. Proposition 8 was a ballot initiative. Getting rid of daylight savings time was a ballot initiative.
Get the big reforms done. And if you look at...
The other thing that's interesting about the ballot initiative process, and it's been argued, and I think that this is probably correct, is that anytime an issue could potentially get one of the representatives in the state of California unelected, they kick the can out to the electorate. They say, you guys decide what you think is important, because I'm not going to put my hand up one way or the other on this because I may get shot. So they kick it out to the electorate. It's the opposite of representative government.
The US Constitution, I think there have been 26 or 27 amendments. I think California, which has when was the Constitution established?
Well, it's been amended. It's been amended 500 times.
Yeah, it's been amended.
Okay, this is where I would put in a record scratch. Okay, you needed 2/3 to change anything, but the Constitution's been amended 500 times. So which one is it? I mean, it's hard or it's easy, because 500 sounds like a lot. Sounds like a lot to me.
It's 500 times. So California has been changed through amendments. So the reason why we as a group chose California is it's been successful.
We as a group. On Agent Medina, who's the group? Who's the group that has decided that California needs its government changed?
Decent chance of being successful in the future, so it's a place worth fighting for, but it has enormous challenges, and you can't actually make reforms because of the referendum system.
Okay, so Bergruin famously had his own referendum. He had his own ballot initiative. I don't remember what the name of it is, but it was moving along the lines of the agenda of his institute, and I think it got like, I don't remember what the numbers were, but it didn't get very many votes. It wasn't effective, and it wasn't successful. And like many things, he started a. Well, I'll talk about this after the video.
So that's California.
All right. So I was at the end of the video. Here's the interesting thing. So yeah, he wasn't successful at it, and he does a lot of things that don't succeed. And what I mean by that is that he started in working with Arianna Huffington. He started something called the World Post, which was basically like a global version of the Huffington Post, and it was in association with the Washington Post, which makes me think that it was in association with Jeff Bezos. And from what I can tell, it failed because it doesn't really exist. Nathan Gardell's likewise is associated with a bunch of publications that are distributed through the LA Times syndication network, but they don't seem to have been very successful because eventually they came out with this magazine called Nomia Magazine, right? Which is an interesting name in and of itself because Nomia is a nominalization of the word meaning to know, to think, right? So it's basically to think is a process. When you take a verb or a process and you turn it into a noun, that's called the nominalization. And so to nominalize the word thinking is a tell to me of some kind of like weird way of looking at the way that we process information. Anyway, I'm going to jump to the next slide here. The next slide is on the second day of the fire, one of the super scoopers got damaged by hitting a drone. And there's the dent in the wing, and here's the picture of the size of the drone that the media claimed caused the hole in the wing. I have questions about this whole thing, mostly because, and it resulted in the super scooper being grounded at the most critical time when it was needed in order to fight the fires. The issue that I have with it is, how did they know what drone? And I mean, there's ways of finding this out, and I want to know what they are. I'm still investigating that stuff. But here are the pictures that were published, and this is the DJI drone, the parts that they say that they found. Now, this was over an active fire zone. Obviously, it didn't burn, and this is the hole that I assume is the legitimate hole in the wing. But the speed at which the person was prosecuted is curious to me, because within a couple of days, the guy was arrested, tried, and convicted. Now, normally things don't happen that fast in the courts. I'm sorry. And here's a video that I'll play that explains it.
Breaking news out of LA today, a man has pled guilty for flying his drone recklessly into a fire plane during the Palisades fire. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Federal authorities have announced charges against a local man connected with a drone collision during the Palisades firefight.
That incident downed the super scooper for several days. Corrine Winter is live in downtown LA with details from prosecutors. Hi, Corrine.
Hi there, Lou and Glenn. And yes, we know who that individual is, 56-year-old Peter Ackman of Culver City. That's the individual, according to the Department of Justice, the drone operator who flew his drone into a super scooper during the Palisades fire. That fire, of course, caused a lot of widespread devastation, also many deaths. The DOJ says Ackman has pleaded guilty to 1 count of unsafe operation of an unmanned aircraft, and that he also allegedly admitted to his reckless and illegal conduct. According to federal prosecutors, Ackman drove to the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. He parked his vehicle on the top floor of a parking structure and flew his drone in the direction of the Palisades. Prosecutors say he wanted to see the damage that the wildfire was causing. That was reportedly about 1.5 miles in the direction of the fire, but he lost sight of that drone. And that drone then collided with a super scooper carrying 2 crew members, aggressively trying to fight that fire. That collision left a 3-inch by 6-inch hole in the left wing of the super scooper. It had to be taken out of service, and we know how important those super scoopers are, one of the most important firefighting aircraft in their arsenal. Here's more on the charges.
Federal prosecutors today filed a criminal charge against Peter Trip Ackerman. Mr. Ackerman has agreed to accept responsibility and plead guilty to 1 count of unsafe operation of an unmanned aircraft. As part of his plea agreement, Mr. Ackerman admitted that he acted recklessly, and his conduct posed an imminent threat to firefighting crews.
And Ackman has a 1 o'clock court appearance here in the federal building behind me in downtown Los Angeles. So we'll have much more. We'll see if prosecutors have more statements after that court hearing. Maybe we'll hear from the defendant's attorney. Either way, we'll be standing by for those possible developments. We'll send it back to you now in the studio.
So as he's set to appear today, we'll let you know later on the channel what the charges may be.
All right, so this is Peter Aikman. This is off of some website which gives you profiles. But Aikman was the president of Skydance Interactive, a dedicated subsidiary of Skydance Media. Skydance Media is a Hollywood studio that's owned by Larry Ellison's son. So when I see a guy like this, I think, you know, what do they say? He's 56, he's 58 years old. And one of the things that I noticed is that they said that he went to a parking structure in Santa Monica, and then he flew his drone 1.5 miles. I don't know what the range on that DJI drone is, but you know, I wonder about the range of these things. I had one. I'd always be very hesitant to fly it out of my line of sight, because you don't know what's going on when it's out of your line of sight. There's a lot of people who do. I'm not saying that you can't, but one of the things that I was thinking I might do while I was watching this that I didn't do yesterday is pull up a Google map and see if I can tell. It's probably easier to do in Google Earth. Let me try Google Earth. And with that, I'm going to look at some comments and then and probably call it a lid. While I'm doing this, Google Earth. I'll look at a couple of comments here. Somebody said somebody looks like Tony Blair. One of the things I realized is that I have a picture of Bergruin and Tony Blair. Bergruin is with everybody in the world. Okay, hang on a second, because my Google Earth just took over my screen and I didn't ask it to do that. Hopefully I'm still broadcasting. Yes. All right. Okay, Google Earth. And let's share Google Earth. Stop screen, present. Share screen, window, Google Earth Pro. Let's put that in here. Let's go to 333 Swarthmore. I don't mind doxing myself anymore because that place doesn't exist. All right, so the story is that he went to Santa Monica. The parking structures in Santa Monica are in 2nd and 4th Street. So let's go look at, let me see, I don't have labels turned on. Let me see if I can turn on some labels, places, is that it? Roads, that's what I need. 4th Street. Okay, I'm going to try to find the closest one to the Palisades. So I'm going to go down 4th Street and look for parking structure. There's one right there. So this would be the closest. Can I add a pin? Wish Google would. Okay, so let's see. That parking structure is right there. And the Palisades are right there. So yeah, maybe that story makes sense. But my guess is that the Super Scoopers, when I saw them in action, were like over here. So anyway, I don't know what I'm concluding by looking at this. So I'm going to stop this line of investigation and just look at the rest of the comments here. So yeah, Tony Blair is a guy who's also associated with Bergruin. Somebody said in the late 90s, there were still maps online that showed where the government was going to move people out and rewild the areas. I haven't been able to find those maps anymore. Yeah, I believe you. Let me know if you do. I'd like to see them. And Polly says in WikiSpooks, it says Nicholas Bergruin gives politicians huge amounts of money. Yeah, this is how you control government. Okay, is with your donations. So I'm gonna unless anybody's got some legit questions right now. Again, I don't know more about George Webb right now than I told you, except that I've heard that he's doing okay. He's doing better today than he was doing yesterday, and he was doing better yesterday than he was doing the day before. So I'm hoping and praying that George is on the mend. And if I have any information, I will share it with you. But please don't speculate. Please don't try to prognosticate based on the information that you've got. I think I have as much information about what's going on with George as anybody. I spent an entire day in the car with him shortly before he went into the hospital. And, I think he's getting better. But if something changes, I'll let you know. Otherwise, thank you, everybody. And I will talk to you soon.